You're tuned in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Hello, Bear Down Believers, and welcome into the show. I'm your host, Matt Reynoldson. Happy weekend, and you'll be seeing this on a Saturday morning or sometime throughout your weekend, but I'm recording this here on a Friday night, right on the heels of Arizona's practice under the lights at Arizona Stadium just 22 days ahead of kickoff of the 2024 season. We'll dive into what I saw in practice and some general takeaways from the first full padded, full live takedown practice of Arizona's fall camp so far. But before I do that, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the Bleav in Arizona podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also check out the video versions of this show over on my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldson. That's Bleav in Arizona. Thanks so much for being one of our loyal listeners. Now, I want to dive into what we saw over at practice because it was a great scene under the lights over there at Arizona Stadium and a great atmosphere, really, as the temperature started to come down. I was in this dress shirt, so I was very excited to see the temperature come down as well. But a few spectators in attendance as well to see a lot of these guys kind of go through the drills and the regular grind of camp, but in full pads. That's really your takeaway from this practice because we saw live tackling, live takedowns, full padded blocking, live ball turnovers, everything like that. We saw guys getting after the football. And I think it really started to look like what we're going to be seeing in 3 weeks when the Lobos come to town, because this is what you're building towards. I know fall camp, a lot of it is trying to keep guys healthy and keep guys on the field and rotate new guys in, but you want to see what the football looks like. And tonight, at least to me, the football looks pretty good. All right, let's start with the quarterback position because that's a no-brainer. Noah Fifita is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country coming back and has certainly earned the starting position for Arizona football. But I think the bigger thing and the bigger takeaway is just how sharp he continues to look through every rep in camp. One thing I've noticed that I really am impressed by with Noah Fifita, and when it comes to his poise and his accuracy, his live arm, is he seems to be taking more chances with the ball this year. And I'm not talking about trying to, make poor decisions or fit it into really tight windows. He gives his wide receivers a chance to go get the ball. Let me give you an example. There was one play in one-on-ones where Jeremiah Patterson broke away from his route on the far side. He was headed toward the corner pylon, and Fifita just threw an absolute rainbow out there. Had a little juice underneath it, had some pop underneath it. But it was a place where only Patterson could have gone to get it. Defender had no chance at it. It was either going to be an incompletion or it was going to be a touchdown. And lo and behold, it was a touchdown. Fifita has a live arm. He's trusting it. His footwork, his balance, his rhythm, everything seems to go up with number 11. And by up, I mean every bit of power, every bit of accuracy, all the zip on the ball is translated and brought up from good footwork. And we've seen the work that Dino Babers has done within this offense to prepare Noah Fifita for this year. He looks so locked into every play, looks so dialed into exactly what the offense needs. Every read seems to be on the same page with most of his receivers. Now, we did see a few more drops tonight. Brent Brennan, the head coach, did discuss that after practice, and you'll hear some comments from him here in a few minutes about the receivers kind of getting blinded by the lights a little bit, playing under the lights for the first time at Arizona Stadium for some of them. But, it's something you kind of expect a little bit in fall camp. A case of the drops can be fixed, but Fifita was really putting it on target for him. And, the backup quarterbacks were doing very well as well. I saw a big step tonight from Cole Tannenbaum, and Brent Brennan definitely discussed the steps that he has made throughout spring and fall to become in that conversation for the backup quarterback position. I think Braden Dorman still stands out athletically above the rest, has that frame, the tallest quarterback in the room wearing number 17, has a lot of zip on the ball, pretty good release point as well. I think he could step in and do a very serviceable job if Noah Fifita, God forbid, were to go down. But I also see from Dorman more poise, maybe this year, maybe this fall than I did in spring, and just the ability to get some power on his throws as well, which I think is an important thing. Fifita is still the clear number one, but I think you do have Tannenbaum and Dorman fighting for that number two job, as well as Adam DeMonte, the transfer from Northern Arizona, made some plays as well. It doesn't stand out quite as physically as Dorman and Tannenbaum do. DeMonte is only a little bit taller than Noah Fifita, and that says something, but DeMonte made some nice throws as well. Anthony Garcia also part of that conversation too. So a lot of quarterbacks in that room. They'll have to pare down the number two reps at some point, but there were a lot of reps to go around tonight as well, because Noah Fifita did not participate in the final 2 periods of practice, which were sort of the live team drills. It was not injury related by any means. Fifita just sat on the sideline and watched as Tannenbaum and Dorman kind of led the number twos and some of the number ones on offense up against mostly the number one defense, and some smatterings of twos and threes in there on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to the defense, but I do want to discuss the wide receiver position for a little bit, because this receiver position really seems to be taking shape. And I don't think any of us may have thought this coming into the year or even coming into fall camp. But Jeremiah Patterson, the transfer from College of San Mateo in the Bay Area, the JUCO transfer, he seems like he could be the number two option at wide receiver for Arizona, which is crazy to think about, because you have a returning starter coming back in Montana Lamonius Craig, another high-profile transfer from Old Dominion, and Raymelo Murphy, so many other guys that are seeing snaps. Jeremiah Patterson looks to be the real deal, and he's wearing the right jersey number as well, because he's wearing number 2, which was sported by Jacob Cowing last year, who set Arizona records and college football records in and of his own right, with just a bevy of receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns. Jacob Cowing left his mark on this program, and now he's with the San Francisco 49ers because of it. I think Jeremiah Patterson, with a similar frame to Cowing, kind of not the tallest guy in the room, but just a sharp route runner, excellent hands, very good separation, just seems to be elite in practice. That's the caveat, in practice, but seems to be elite in all the right areas. So really impressed by what I've seen by Jeremiah Patterson as well. And if Patterson emerges in the starting lineup, that means your game one starting lineup is a little scary for opponents, because your 3 receivers would be obviously your number 1 receiver, T-Mac, Tedero, McMillan. Montana Lamonius Craig would probably play that Z outside wide receiver. And then your Y slot receiver is Jeremiah Patterson. Then coming off the bench or rotating in, you have guys like Raymelo Murphy. You have guys like Malachi Riley, so many other guys that can play a role. AJ Jones as well, has had his moments in camp. I think this wide receiver room is emerging as one of the strengths of the team. And it certainly helps when they're getting all this production. They are getting these reps with the quarterbacks. They are seeing the progression of the offense. They're seeing the install without having the best wide receiver, hands down, on this team, not taking fall camp reps. So that's super important, because T-Mac is watching from the sidelines, probably could be playing right now, probably could be in team activities. He's still been going through a lot of individual drills and looks good. He probably could be ready to be in those team activities, but the coaching staff and the medical staff is playing it ultra safe, as he's coming off season foot surgery. And now it's given the other guys a chance to shine. And that's where Patterson has really, really made his mark. He is, without a doubt, to me at this point in camp, without a doubt, the top slot receiver on this team. So certainly exciting there. Moving on around the offense, I wanted to talk just a little bit about running backs. It seems like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has turned a corner, and that is important for this team. So we see right now, I think from my perspective, 3 transfer running backs are leading the way for Arizona at this point in camp. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the running back transfer from New Mexico, we'll call him Bill, because he, as Justin Spears relayed to me, the beat writer for the Arizona Daily Star, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt got the nickname Bill because he showed up to his first camp in college and had his head shaved and looked like Little Bill from the cartoon. So he's gone by Bill ever since. Bill Krosky Merritt, or just Bill. Number 2 running back, I think right now, is Quali Conley, the transfer from San Jose State. Those were 2 very strong Mountain West running backs a year ago. And I think it's a very impressive group in that respect. I think it's been fun to watch this team. It's been fun to watch this running back group come together. And with Arizona leaning into such heavy sets, they're doing different things with running backs out of the backfield. If you line up in 21 personnel, which is 2 tight ends and 1 running back, they can run the ball, inside tackle, off tackle. They can run the ball in a lot of different ways, but they can also, with those heavy sets, split one of the running backs out wide or get one of the running backs out of the backfield on one of those swing passes. And then you have a lot of blockers out in front and just a lot of ability to do different and creative things in Dino Babers' offense. Speedy Luke fits the exact type of player, Rayshon Speedy Luke, a guy that can come and just kill teams out of the backfield. But I don't necessarily see him right now in the bell cow category. I see him as the offensive weapon category. Speedy Luke could be that type of guy that, maybe gets an occasional carry up the gut or an occasional carry off tackle, but he is going to be your most lethal weapon from the running back room in the passing game. Now, guys like Quali Conley can do that too. He's exceptional out of the backfield in the passing game. And I think Arizona's pass protection from the running back room, you'd have to ask running backs coach Alonzo Carter a little bit more about this. But from what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be a lot of lapses in pass protection from the running back room, which at the college level, a lot of times is something that takes snaps away from running backs. So that's a good thing to just check off the list, even though it's probably not the highest priority thing on fans' minds. Fans are saying who can carry the ball, who can get the most yards, who can find the end zone, and who can have big plays. But pass protection is what keeps you on the field, and I don't see that to be a glaring problem with Arizona's running back room right now. The tight end room continues to grow. I think that right now the top 2 are separating themselves. Kean Burnett, one of the Juice County boys, as they say, went to high school with Noah Fifita and Tedroa McMillan and Jacob Manu at Servite in California in Orange County. And he has really emerged as Arizona's top tight end. Brent Brennan talked about it a little bit after practice tonight, and it's so impressive to see what he has become as far as a weapon on offense, as far as a reliable pass catcher, as far as a guy who gets separation even from Arizona's stellar defensive backroom, which I'll talk a little bit more about in just a little bit. But he has just been so impressive in the tight end room. Roberto Miranda also continuing to make plays in the passing game, has traditionally been a blocking tight end, but this year could play definitely a dual threat role from that tight end position. But I think the bigger takeaway is what we've seen from Kean Burnett so far in camp. Here's what Brent Brennan had to say after practice about Burnett.
Shoot, I'm excited about Kean. I think everybody is. He's had a great first week of camp. He's playing the ball great. He's running great. And he's a really hard worker. And so that's been something that's shown up consistently throughout the offseason, that he's a kid that he's always trying to get extra film, trying to get extra catches. And I think so far it's paying off. And I'm just excited to see what he can do, just like you are.
All right, wanted to get one Brennan soundbite out of the way because he wouldn't say anything about the offensive line. There were some things on individual players that Brennan offered, but right now the offensive line remains a bit of a mystery because Brennan doesn't talk about injuries. He gives us incredible access to practice and access to his players and everything like that, but will not talk about injuries, is not going to have that discussion, especially in camp, and especially since we haven't seen anything that looks to be season ending so far in camp. Knock on wood. But he would not discuss kind of the roulette situation going on in the offensive line, guys rotating in and out, most of the starters, which is a scary thought. Most of the starters not seeing any time in team reps. We heard from Wendell Moe earlier this week, the returning all Pac-12 conference guard, left guard for the Arizona Wildcats, and he said that he's dealing with some soft tissue injuries right now. We haven't seen projected starting right guard, Leif Magnuson, at all. could also be dealing with some injuries. Josh Baker is out with an undisclosed injury. So we've seen a lot of the twos, which means we've seen a little more Shenko at guard and at center. We've seen a little more Grayson Stovall. We've seen other guys kind of rotate in and see reps. And I don't think, I've said this in an earlier podcast, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world for Arizona's offensive line, because what was the question coming into this fall, especially when we considered them having 4 returning starters coming back and maybe 5 guys with starting experience if you count all 5 positions on the offensive line? Well, before camp, it was revealed, or on the first day of camp, it was revealed that Raymond Pulido would no longer be a part of the program, or at least for this season, that he was out for the season for an undisclosed reason. And his status with Arizona football is, for me and for a lot of us right now, just a complete unknown. So that knocked out one of the 5. So the 4 you had returning were Leif Magnuson at right guard, Wendell Moe at left guard, Josh Baker at center, and then Jonas Avenaya at right tackle. The only question was left tackle. We had that kind of answered earlier in camp. Rhino Tapatatia has had a really good camp. Rhino has done very well at left tackle despite just being a redshirt freshman. He has not had a whole lot of live game reps. Obviously hasn't had any at the college level just yet, but he is someone that has really emerged through camp. Rhino is going to be an incredible left tackle. Whether that's this year or whether that's down the road remains to be seen, but Arizona is certainly hoping it's this year, and he has certainly locked down that left tackle spot in camp so far. So outside of Rhino, we have seen, outside of the tackles, really, Rhino and Jonah, we have seen just kind of a fire drill on the interior of Arizona's offensive line. And the challenge of that is that, you need your starting offensive line to build chemistry, but this is kind of alleviating some of those depth concerns as you go into the season and what will be a grind of a Big 12 season, playing 10 Big 12 opponents, 9 conference games overall. You're going to need some depth on the offensive line as guys get nicked and bruised and maybe go down. So building that in camp, even though you'd like to have your starting offensive line in place and healthy, might not be the worst thing in the world. It all comes down to this, right? Fall camp is a balance of creating physicality, getting guys ready for the season, ready for the grind of a 12-game schedule, and keeping your players healthy. That's what Arizona has to balance. And I think tonight, a live tackling, full padded practice under the lights at Arizona Stadium with a few team periods mixed in and, live ball turnovers, live to the ground tackling, physicality in the trenches, everything like that is a true test of the anxiety for a coaching staff at some point. But I asked Brent Brennan after the practice, how much he was looking forward to this, to see what his guys were ready to put out there on the field and what he was looking forward to about this practice and what he took from it after his team practiced for a little over 2 hours under the lights there at Arizona Stadium.
I thought it was great. I think it's definitely, having not played in these lights here for a while, I think that was good to see. I think they're bright. And so, they really are. And so I saw some of our receivers struggling with that. And so we're going to have to do a good job of getting out here some, throughout the rest of training camp. And,
adapt to the physicality well.
I hope so. I'll watch the tape, but I think there was some good stuff and some bad stuff on that tape. I think there's some guys at the offense, some things that the offensive coaches are going to be excited about, and some things that the defensive coaches are going to be excited about, and then I think there's going to be some stuff that they are not happy about. So it's just kind of a normal football practice.
All right, that second question you heard was from me as well. So let's kind of segue that into talking about the front seven and talking a little bit about what we saw from this Arizona defense in that live tackling practice under the lights at Arizona Stadium. And let's start with the defensive line because Michael Bleav of the Arizona Daily Star asked a very interesting question in post-practice about whether Brennan prefers to have his guys over 300 on the defensive line or he prefers to have a lot of guys who are fast and can get upfield and kind of in that 280 to 290 range. Well, this year, unfortunately, Brennan doesn't really have a choice because they have one guy on the entire defense that is over 300 pounds, and that is Chuba Mai, the transfer from UC Davis, weighing in at 349 pounds and rolling the jersey all the way up underneath the pads so you can see that big gut coming out and hitting the A gap from the defensive line spot, being a real space eater in this 4-2-5 defense. But the challenges that Arizona has to get interior pressure from guys that are not going to outweigh a lot of interior offensive linemen in the Big 12. U of A does not play Oklahoma State this year, but that seems to me like it would be a matchup that Arizona would have problems with, because Oklahoma State has a bunch of grown men on the offensive line, a bunch of guys that have seen a lot of snaps and are pretty heavy dudes. And I think they would push around the interior of Arizona's offensive line, or Arizona's defensive line. So you either need Chuba Mai to stay very healthy all the way through and play a massive impact as a space eater at that defensive tackle position, or you need guys that are going to hit the gaps hard and get in the backfield and wreak havoc and trust your linebacking core to clean up the mess there. So we saw good plays from Chuba. We saw good plays from Trey Smith tonight. He'll be somewhat rotating in at defensive tackle, some at defensive end. Kayvon Darton, other media members have been calling him the secret weapon there, the transfer from Syracuse. So Darton could play a big role there. They've got a lot of guys that they could rotate in on that defensive line. There's depth there, but it's all pretty unproven depth. And guys have shown flashes in camp. I think we saw more flashes tonight because of the live tackling and because of the live engagement at the line of scrimmage. I saw some good defensive. I saw some good defensive plays. A couple TFLs. I wrote it down. Darton had a great TFL in the backfield on what was looking to be an off-tackle run by Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Darton blew that up in the backfield, and that's a credit to his other defensive line mates because they held the line. Darton got in there, got around, that guard tackle split, and got his hands around the ankles of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So that's a positive sign for the Arizona defense, that the defensive line has a lot of guys they could rotate in and a lot of guys that are starting to stand out in that group. But I don't think you have a clear front four that you are ready to say, this is the front four. These are the guys that we're riding with this year. But, some of the best programs in college football rotate furiously on the defensive line and in the front seven overall. So maybe that's Arizona's formula for success this year. I'm going to default and trust Dwayne Akina on that front. And I think Joe Seumalo has proven himself a pretty good defensive line coach so far, at least with what he's developed so far in spring and fall with this team and the way he talks about his group. I think they're confident. I think the jury should be still out for us as media and us as watchers of the Arizona Wildcats. But I think there's reason for optimism there. And I think one of the biggest reasons for optimism is that they do have the bodies to rotate in and stay fresh and be closer to 100% than I think a lot of teams will be come the fourth quarter of these close and tight Big 12 games. That brings me to the linebacking core. And I think Arizona has found three inside linebackers in this 4-2-5 system that really have stood out. And obviously the first one being Jacob Manu, the returning first team all Pac-12 player. He is a stud, an All-American caliber guy, one of the Servite guys. So certainly one of the leaders of this team, one of the true vocal guys, one of the true leaders by example on this team. Manu's going to be that man in the middle. Now, Tay Brown has done extremely well so far in camp, and I don't want to get his name wrong, so let's do this very slowly. Kamuela Kayahue. Kayahue has had an incredible camp at off-ball inside linebacker. I should have said his name before now. He's been exceptional. He has shown up in a lot of plays. He seems to be in the right spot a lot. And I think Tay Brown also tonight, I think, stood out to me more than the other practices I've seen from Brown. Brown seems to shine under the lights. So I think between Kayahue, between Tay Brown, and between Jacob Manu, they've got three inside linebackers that you have to feel really good about. And then obviously Heem coming off the edge. He's a scary man. Justin Flo. You've got guys that can really wreak havoc in the backfield on that front as well. So they've got dudes in the front seven. They've got capabilities. And when you have an inside linebacking core in the 4-2-5 that can really plug a lot of those gaps, if somebody misses an assignment on the defensive line, that makes you feel a lot better about an insurance policy on that front. That brings me to the absolute strength of the team. And this strength just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. The defensive back room is just ridiculously loaded. I mean, you could go 8 or 9, maybe 10 deep with this defensive back room. We saw another guy emerge tonight. Colgate transfer Owen Goss, a senior safety, originally from Illinois, and he was making plays all over the field tonight. Had a couple TFLs, had a forced fumble, a couple pass breakups. Goss was all over the field tonight, so clearly he's ready for the bright lights. Markeith Groves Killebrew, also a guy that fits the physical profile. I mean, just looks shredded out there. Looks like receivers cannot even hand fight with him, much less get any separation. And those are just reserves. I mean, the 5 defensive backs you've got on the field right now, starting with your 2 stalwart safeties in Gunnar Maldonado and Dalton Johnson, they're studs. Genesis Smith looks like he's involved in every play, and he's by far the most impressive athlete on the entire defense. And then in the cornerback room, I think you've seen Takario Davis and Traden Stukes emerge as the guys that will be your starting corners. And those are dudes that have a ton of game reps and a ton of game experience. And Davis is even being projected as a potential first-round draft pick next year. This defensive back room is unbelievably loaded. And I didn't even mention guys like Javion Celestine, who have also had very good camps. They have guys all over the field, defensive backs consistently winning one-on-one reps against Arizona's wide receivers, which usually for me tells me when I watch those one-on-ones, and I watch them pretty closely, that when receivers win against these defensive backs, they're pretty darn good. Jeremiah Patterson, for example, fits that bill. But I really, really like what I'm seeing from Arizona's defensive back room. It has been so impressive so far. And it was just fun to see Arizona working out under the lights tonight. This is the time of year where you want to see guys embrace physicality, where you want to see guys come into their own and come into the game attitude. What are you going to be on August 31st? Well, show me on August 9th under the lights at Arizona Stadium. And they certainly did show me a lot tonight. So just over 20 days from game day and over 10 days from game preps beginning. They'll start that about a week and a half before the New Mexico game coming up here in just about a couple weeks. But now the reps will start to pare down for Arizona football, and certainly excited to see which players rise to the top of this Arizona football coffee cup, if you will, as we progress in fall camp. Should be an exciting road to the season opener on August 31st. All right, it's time for the Bear Down Rundown, telling you what else is going on in Arizona athletics and sometimes Arizona alums. And one Arizona alum is on the verge of a gold medal for USA basketball. That's head coach Steve Kerr coaching the USA men's basketball team. And want to talk a little bit about Thursday's win over Serbia, because that was really an incredible comeback for the United States. And yes, it looks like when things like that happen, you see a guy like Steph Curry go off from the three-point line. You see a triple-double from LeBron James. You see Kevin Durant being the sniper down the stretch, this golden generation of U.S. men's basketball players taking over down the stretch. But really, I was impressed by the lack of panic, and perhaps I shouldn't be surprised because this is what Steve Kerr has shown really his whole career of being a championship basketball coach. I was surprised at the lack of panic when it felt like the U.S. wasn't closing the gap against Serbia. And what was impressive to me is considering how much Joel Embiid has struggled throughout this entire Olympics run, how much Steve Kerr leaned on him down the stretch and said, you are going to attack Nikola Jokic on the defensive end. You are going to make him work on every defensive possession and do your best to try and wear him out and try and wear out some of these Serbian defenders so they don't have their legs in the fourth quarter, so they can't continue an historic shooting night in Paris, so they can't continue to just kill the United States from the outside. It started with Kerr trusting Joel Embiid in that sense, and Embiid played a huge role in the second half and down the stretch of that game, even as that third quarter deficit, when the U.S. shrunk it all the way down to 6, and it was like, okay, we're good. The gap is closed. It's fine. Scare averted, everything like that. And then Serbia, a huge run at the end of the third quarter, blasted this thing open back into a double-digit lead. It was scary times for the United States. But what did Steve Kerr do? Kerr didn't panic. He leaned on Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid delivered in crunch time. And of course, the veteran stars on this team, it's led by veteran stars. LeBron James is, one of the greatest basketball players in this country's history, and a true American Olympian, a guy that carried the United States flag through the opening ceremonies in Paris. And, what an iconic image that was. Well, he has put this nation, this team on his back through this whole Olympic run. It's been so impressive to see. This guy is synonymous with basketball in the United States, and he's doing it in every way he has done throughout his career, being that true five-tool player. We were waiting for a game from Steph Curry where he turned out to just light it up from the outside. And, there are legitimate pitfalls to Steph Curry's game in that he gets picked on defensively. There are times where he is not a factor in the offense when he's not shooting the ball well. We've seen that at times in this Olympics. But then there are times like yesterday where he can score 17 points in the first quarter and can be the only spark offensively for much of the night for the United States, and then eventually help plunge the daggers at the very end. And then you have a guy like Kevin Durant, who is probably the best plug and play athlete, maybe in the history of sports, but definitely the best plug and play basketball player that we've ever seen. And what do I mean by plug and play? You fit him into any system. You fit him into any scenario really in the history of basketball, and this dude's going to be productive. He's the highest scoring player in the history of United States basketball in the Olympics. He passed Lisa Leslie earlier this week in a win, and Kevin Durant is that guy who may not be. He was not always consistent in the win over Serbia. May not be always the guy that you can just lean on and lean on and lean on and lean on, but man, is he going to come through with one of the toughest buckets you'll ever see. He did that late in the game with a dagger mid-range shot that was just a step or two inside the three-point line. And KD, easy money sniper, coming through yet again. So props to Steve Kerr for getting the U.S. men's basketball team to this point. LeBron James said it after the game. It's notoriously tough to beat a team 3 times. The U.S. did it in an exhibition with Serbia, beating Serbia in group play, and then in the gold medal semifinals to set up a date in the gold medal match with host nation France. So both the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team will both be playing France on Sunday in gold medal matches in Paris. And what a great time to be a USA basketball fan, and definitely proud of Steve Kerr repping the A, repping Bear down at Paris in the Olympics. So very incredible job by the U.S. men's basketball team and avoiding disaster. It's what we all love to see. And I think the smart money would definitely be on the United States in both matches, men's and women's, tomorrow. That'll do it for this edition of the Bleav in Arizona podcast. If you have your thoughts on fall camp, feel free to tweet at me at Matt_Reynoldson. We'll get a mailbag segment going one of these days. Certainly excited to do something like that. But Arizona back on the practice field on Sunday. We'll be right back there with them. They practice Monday and Tuesday as well. So an exciting week of football ahead. We'll see how many more full pads practices we see, but we certainly took a lot from the first one tonight. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Bleav in Arizona podcast. One more reminder to please like and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. The video version will be up on YouTube as well. Have a great night and a great weekend. We'll see you later this weekend on Sunday. For now, I'm Matt Reynoldson. Have a good one.